Hello, everyone. It is Friday, March 16th. This is Kops office hours. We have a fairly light agenda today. Please add things you want to the agenda. Otherwise, I will jump right in and start with the first item on the agenda, which is, I guess, one that I added, which is the status of Kops 1, the 1.9 release for Kops. We did an alpha 1, I think almost 2 weeks ago now. We found a bunch of issues relating primarily to I guess I'd say life cycle issues, so upgrades and repeatedly running Kops update. And so we are working through those. I think we have basically got them all done, except there's one maybe issue still open around detection or validation of instance groups in a rolling update. So, but yes, probably ready to do the next alpha, get the fixes that we have done out there, and hopefully get more feedback, and hopefully that will be the last round of problems. But thank you to everyone for the problems that everyone did find, and hopefully this weekend I'll do the alpha 2 release with everyone's fixes in there, and then we will get going. And we've talked, I think, previously about doing 1.10 faster, and so we will try to do a 1.10 alpha basically pretty soon after we get the 1.9 release out the door. So probably not a whole lot of new features in 1.10, but we'll have to see exactly what lands in Kubernetes 1.10 to do that. And then I guess related is the next item on the agenda, which is so sort of my strategy for when we find these things. Sort of like it's good that we found the bugs in alpha and not in a release, but I'm trying to make it so that we find them even earlier. And I've been adding things like I call it like a lifecycle integration test, but essentially by mocking the AWS cloud APIs, we are now able to run effectively a Kops create, a Kops update, and a Kops update, for example. And that lets us see the bug, which otherwise you'd have to do Kops create, Kops update, Kops update. But it's now it's effectively a unit test. Like, it doesn't touch any real APIs. And so we should never have that. Well, once it covers all of our scenarios, then we won't have that problem again going forwards. It's still like this requires mocking the AWS API, which is obviously a lot of work, but it is we're getting there, and we have coverage on the at least the bits where we had bugs in 1.9 alpha 1. That's actually all we have on the agenda. I know Chris Love is running a few minutes late. He typically has some things, but does anyone else have some things that they want to talk about or bring up?
I was going to say, do you feel any more confident in calling it a beta 1 rather than an alpha 2?
I don't know. How do people feel? I would. My concern is just that we saw those issues that we hadn't foreseen. But on the other hand, if we add test coverage on all of them, and we have that, then we could probably do a beta 1. I don't want to do a beta 1 if I haven't got to the bottom of the validate issue we've seen. That's sort of
fair enough.
So for me, the difference, and I don't know where I got this from, but to me, alpha means anything that you create with this, plan on tearing it down. Right? In a more traditional product, it's your data is not going to be safe, sort of thing. Whereas beta, yeah, there might be some bugs, but we might be able to patch that out, right? Like, so.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that applies to Kops. It also applies. I think there's also we don't necessarily have. We're not adding new resources particularly this time, but I think another one that might be is like you might expect an alpha to delete your cluster by mistake. In other words, like your data may disappear, whereas you would be very unhappy if a beta did that. I mean yeah, regardless, but alpha.
Yeah, I totally just figured I would ask for that reason of like, are we still in alpha confidence? Because it sounds like we are, so that's cool. Yeah.
I feel like we are, simply because in alpha 1 we found some issues. Well, I don't think any of them were data loss type issues, but we certainly found some issues where it was like doing unexpected or trying to do unexpected things with the cloud resources, which could have escalated. So I'd want to keep it as alpha and hopefully fast follow on the beta, because hopefully hopefully there will be no bugs. If there are already bugs, I hope they're found.
Did we ever figure out if we're landing new things while in alpha still, or once we get the first alpha, we're not landing any new features? I don't think we talked about that briefly last time, but I don't think we ever came to the decision.
I don't think we have a firm, like, across the board answer. I think the answer is that yes, we will land features in an alpha as long as we don't consider them horrifically disruptive. So, like, for example, I wouldn't want to land, like, we've talked about like splitting out the network as an object. That to me would be horrifically disruptive and not something we should do, like, once we've started doing the alphas.
Got it.
But, like, if we're talking about, I think a pertinent example would be like the ongoing discussions about like direct connect instead of a NAT gateway or internet gateway. Like, that's something that I think we could add as while in alpha, as long as the scope, as we eventually define it, proves to be, tolerable and not something that we feel is very risky. But yeah, certainly if we end up doing alphas much faster in the release, we will basically perpetually be in alpha, and so we will have to ship features in alpha. Like, what we don't like, imagine that if we get 110, if we do 110 alpha, well, we might even start doing 111 alpha very early, like, and that we don't want to like not have a cycle where we're open for. It's always bad to have a point in time when the tree is closed, and we want to avoid that.
I think me and a couple other guys are new. We just joined today. We are really interested in trying to help out on the OpenStack side of things, but we're really worried about testing. Our environment specifically is on Okada. And like, as you said, you mocked up like the AWS API. There's a lot of changes that are going on in OpenStack, and we're not really sure how we're going to be able to successfully help you guys with OpenStack without it being kind of pigeonholed into what our company is currently running. Do you have any suggestions on what we should do?
Remind me what version is Okada, old or new? Sorry.
It's two versions back from the bleeding edge. So it's Queens, something before Queens, and then Okada. When I deployed it, it was cutting edge, but now it's already outdated.
I mean, I think so. I will say I regret not having done the AWS mocking earlier and having like. That seems very high return on investment. It's a bit of a pain, but it's very high return on investment in terms of like getting really like tests that really test things without doing a whole lot of work. You have to do without doing a whole lot of work per test. You do like a lot of upfront work, like to mock out the APIs, or implement the interfaces. But then it's pretty. You get a lot of value out of it, or we found a lot of issues with it that it's nice to have continuously tested. The other nice thing about that is then we can have testing that doesn't require an OpenStack API implementation, so it can run in the normal E2E like continuously without you having to get into like federated testing type scenarios.
Yeah, that's actually what I was crazy worried about. I was like, I'm just going to spin up a bunch of different OpenStack clouds in my server rack at my house. Yeah, I was like, I'll just run 3 IOs and I'll just test against those. But now I guess we'll have to think about that when we're running our stuff.
I think it's fine to target a version that's like, a couple of versions old. I don't know to what extent, specifically for OpenStack, there are breaking changes, I guess would be the question. Like, to what extent will it not work on newer versions?
It really depends. There's so many services moving all at the same time. Heat and Magnum are probably good in between one major version, but after 2 major versions, there could be breaking changes. But luckily, because they're designed like CloudFormation, they're backwards compatible usually. So I wasn't so much worried about that as I was like just the vast majority of different networking types and different vendors that are involved in OpenStack. That's where it gets scary, and that's where AWS is way more streamlined. So yeah.
I mean, it would be wonderful to have your contribution, and I will help however I can. I think if you want to, like, don't worry about targeting other people's use cases is my sort of advice. I think like other people will speak up on their use cases, and I think the most important thing is to get one use case working for OpenStack. And then if that's your use case, that's great, because it's really hard to work for someone else's use case. And once we have one, then the second will be much easier. So yeah, if you want to do yours, then please do. And don't worry about other people, because better to have something than nothing. And then if I can help in any way, ping me on Slack. I am Justin SB on Slack. And also there's the Kops dev channel as well. But
yeah, I joined it because I checked GitHub and I was very excited because it's a great tool. The other guys on the team are with a company called Collective Bias, and they actually use Kops, and they sold me on it, but they're using it with AWS. And I'm deploying this massive private cloud, and now I'm trying to lower the barrier of entry to use it. So
that's very cool. And there's also, yes, you should also be aware of the machine set API, which is happening, or the machines API, which is happening. That's a related project to effectively bring the management of instances under under Kubernetes management. And what that will mean is, so for example, when you'll have your nodes will be managed as an API object. And if you wanted to add another node, which might not be as relevant, well, I guess, anyway, if you want to add another node, you might either create a machine object, which is sort of like a pod, or you might change the target number of machines in a machine set or a machine deployment type concepts. And it would go and create the pod-like machine object, and the controller would then go and create a machine. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to get there. Everyone in sort of the Kubernetes community is trying to get there, and it will mean that specifically for Kops or what you're working on, it means that running the masters or running the bootstrap process is the most important thing. And maybe running in the equivalent of auto-scaling groups is maybe not as important anymore. But for a new cloud, it's important for, anyway. So just there's that to be aware of and to look into as well.
Yeah, no, I get that. That makes sense. So
awesome. And what's your Slack handle?
GM Wingard. I can put it in chat. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Look forward to those, and yeah, ping us with anything, me or people with questions, I think.
Yeah, we'll go as fast as we can. Unfortunately, this is going to be done on our own time. I have so much work to do already, but I need this tool, so I'm just going to make it work.
That is awesome. And this is sort of the question that's always been a barrier for me. Which cloud that I can sign up for with a credit card is closest to your configuration?
Yeah, so I don't know that answer, because they don't really say. Rackspace doesn't really explain what their implementation is unless you are talking to them at the OpenStack conference, and then they kind of bleed out some details. But I'm basically running a stock Okada install with all the features that Okada has, as many of them as I can deploy. The only thing I'm missing right now is Trove and a couple of other services. But
hey, Michael, I have some friends over at Rackspace, so definitely reach out if you got some questions about that. So we can
yeah. I would love to, because I was actually going to just email them randomly and be like, hey guys, think I could have some free credits or something?
Don't know if I can get that.
There is a SIG OpenStack, I think. So I don't know, Mike.
Dims is the big OpenStack guy. Justin.
Cool. So maybe I'll go follow them in their channel again. But yeah, no, it would be wonderful if you could, any contributions at even 5 minutes a day, whatever you spare is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Chris, did you have anything in particular? I don't know if well, basically we've ripped through the agenda, and such as it is. And
did have a quick question about tasks, because it came up with another developer this morning. So within a task, we have an A, we have an E, and we have changes, right?
Actual expected changes are the, yes, A is actual, E is.
Okay, so the actual object coming back, that's nil, then we got to create one. We've got an expected object. If the actual object's different than the expected object, then we have to do an update. And if we don't get one back, then we can do a create.
Correct.
Okay. And the changes are coming back in the diff already.
Changes is like a diff, yeah. So if you want to go and like, so one of the things you can do is on an update, you can effectively go through the changes and effectively cross them off, nil them out. And then at the end, you can check if the object is reflect.db equals to the empty object. In other words, whether you have actually made all the changes that have been made.
Since Andrew's on, I was going to ask him how close the DigitalOcean cloud controller is to get working in Kops. If we can at least do a proof of concept on that.
Yeah. So the controller itself is ready. It's just the Kops integrations that I'm working on. So I actually came to ask one question, or two questions actually. So the first one is, because DigitalOcean droplets don't support kind of the IAM features that like AWS or GCP has, so we can't access kind of the cloud features without having a key inside the actual machine. So that's a problem for Node Up and pretty much pretty important for Kops to work. So I'm wondering if you guys are okay with kind of modifying the user data template to inject those keys in there.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, whatever is the user data, what is the expected mechanism for this in general on DigitalOcean, like getting your credentials into the node?
Yeah, so it would depend. Like people, I mean, you can just SSH and then just add it in a file. But obviously that's not going to work for Kops, so probably user data is our best bet.
Yeah, then yeah, user data is great. I think, yeah, whatever makes sense on DigitalOcean, either in one file or I don't know, I know on GCE it has multiple files, but whatever works.
Does that sound like another key set to you, Justin?
You could do it as a secret or a key set, yes.
So we've got already functionality for secrets in Kops, right?
Yep.
So, and that would help us once we get into a controller model. That way that secret could actually be in the cluster. So that's a way. And then the node up could access the secret, pull it down itself.
Okay.
There is also something else coming, so I have a machine controller, like proof of concept implementation, which brings it up on VMware. But what it does is it brings up a machine and then it SSHs to the machine and drops the stuff in that way. So it doesn't help with the masters, but it could be an option for like the future. But yes, I think for now, instance data is probably great. I think, you have to be careful about security, but
so I was thinking in the bucket might be better than rather than putting in user data.
But you can't get into the bucket without the key.
Yeah, so it'll be both the token to talk to the Cloud API, but then also we have a S3 compatible product called Spaces, which we would also need to put.
But there's no perms on the VM.
No, we don't have that feature yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't have that feature yet, so you have to have the keys inside.
So we need a user data. Gotcha. The other thing I was going to mention, Andrew, is that Justin and I was talking about the machine API.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question. Was I saw the proposal merged, and so
yeah. It's at a place where we might, and DigitalOcean needs it, right? Because you guys don't have instance groups.
Yeah. So I am working on a private repo just on my own to kind of get a proof of concept. So like I didn't use the machine API. I just created my own kind of CRD spec for droplets. But I'm more than happy to look at the machine API and kind of adapt that if it makes sense. So is there any work done on Kops already that uses it?
Yeah, I have a proof of concept for adopting a version from like a month ago, which basically gets us into the bare metal environment. And so what it does is I think we ship the bundle idea where, we take the files that are on S3, and the way it works is it then will SCP them across and SSH to exec. So it doesn't even need user data or like a boot up script. It just needs the ability to come up and recognize a public key and to find the IP address. But those are the two. So that's like much more generic. I think the machines API is, a Kubernetes type project. So this will work everywhere in like not just Kops, but anywhere. And it's good because then things like the autoscaler will work consistently whether you install with Kops or GKE or EKS or whatever it is, right?
You would hope, Justin.
Yes. But I think the biggest open question, which is currently under discussion, and I think Jessica Ochen is currently working on it, is the bootstrapping and how you bring up effectively. Like, so if you magically have some masters, it's a great model and it's simple and it seems easy. I think bootstrapping is the slightly open question. She has a great proposal around effectively like sort of like an unoptional pivot. And I'm trying to figure out whether we can fit that into Kops and how that works. And she's working on it as well. So hopefully she'll just fix all our problems.
Yeah, there's some bootstrapping issues with the external cloud controller managers as well. But yeah, I mean, we'll deal with those when they come up.
Cool. Yeah, again, if there's anything I can do to help, just ping me on Slack. And my Slack is a bit of a disaster zone, but I will eventually circle back to them.
Noted. Thanks.
And yeah, I guess if no one else, sorry, I should say, is there anything else anyone would like to talk about or bring up? I'm told today is St. Patrick's Day, so I guess everyone is keen to go to St. Patrick's Day celebration. Where?
Saturday.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, Saturday.
Never too early to start.
I'm married to an Irish woman, so I know that much.
Okay. But if there's nothing else, then I wish everyone a happy weekend.
Yes, have a good weekend.
Yeah, you guys have a great afternoon.
Thanks, guys.